Well, hey there, Tommy Toole here, and this is how to get more out of your breakup than just heartache. This is Module 1, Lesson 1. Closure and the post-divorce process. So the first lesson that we're going to start out with is getting to indifference. Man, if someone had had this sort of program available to me when I was going through my divorce, it would have been pretty cool. I went through my divorce probably, well, I don't want to say, it was a long time ago, but there weren't things available to me, the learning tools and the resources that there are now. So I'm just so excited for you, and I'm so excited to offer this program to you, and I want to thank you for joining in and taking the time to learn about how to self-improvement and how you can get over this whole thing a lot faster than I did. So I'm happy to help you, and this is our first lesson. So I think you're in for a treat. This is the healing chapter. You know how some people get stuck and can't just seem to ever move on, and they think that happiness just isn't in the cards for them? They think it's too late for them, or whatever. Do you know someone like that? Is that someone you? Well, if not, then you might want to skip this chapter, because this chapter is about moving on and how not only to get unstuck, but how to get launched and get the closure you need to move on. Getting closure is one of those things that your intellect is very aware of how you need to change and what needs to happen, but your emotions aren't on board. And nothing you seem to do helps. And even though you know what you need to do, you can't seem to convince yourself and reason your emotions out of this place. Sometimes it's a dark place. In this chapter, we talk about the stages of grief. But not only that, we talk about how we hold ourselves hostage. And I'm going to show you here's the big picture of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about why getting closure is important. I'm going to give you 4 strategies to help you get closure and get unstuck. And I'm going to give you a checklist for closure. So one thing I want to point out to you is we can, at the end of this, at the end of my recording here, you'll see some slides, and there's a worksheet to follow along so that you get the most out of this presentation. If you want to, it's got the fill in the blank type stuff. So pause now if you haven't already done that, and go grab that worksheet, print it out, or if you have 2 monitors, whatever, but print it out and follow along with that. That you kind of can refer to it. And some people learn different ways, or just watch this presentation. Either way. So I have that worksheet available for you. All right, so here's the big picture. The key to getting closure, that's what we're going to talk about. How we hold ourselves hostage, and the 4 simple strategies to get you unstuck. Those are your takeaways from this training. So have you ever been able to completely dissect someone else's issue and pinpoint exactly what they need to do? But when it comes to your own stuff, that's another story, right? So why is it that when we're in the forest, we can't see through the trees for ourselves? Well, here's why. It's very simple. To some degree, we are indifferent to our friends' issues. So when they're talking about what's going on, we're not vested like they are. So what has to happen to you is that you have to become indifferent to your own stuff before you can see straight and be healed. Kind of like what you do with your friends. You're not living their life. The things that they're experiencing aren't your experiences, but you're indifferent to them, and that's why you can kind of have an unbiased view, and it seems real clear to you what they need to do. But if you could become indifferent, then you wouldn't have closure issues, right? But that's not exactly true. So confusing, Tommy. Where are you going with this? Just bear with me. We're going to get through this. This is good stuff. Closure is sort of a buzzword. It comes in doses and takes time. You become indifferent with doses of closure. When you are indifferent, your emotions don't rule you. Kind of like hormones, right? Hormones kind of rule you. Same thing with your emotions. You can make sound, logical decisions. I'm sorry, I don't know about that reference to hormones. I just threw it in there. My dentist said something about that once when, I don't know, it was just kind of crazy. So I've always remembered that. It's kind of funny. So how do we do that? How do you make sound logical decisions when you're going through this emotional process? We need to get you to that place where you believe, I mean, truly believe that emotions will follow your actions, not the other way around, and eventually you will become indifferent. So a lot of times we say actions follow, our emotions follow actions. So that's kind of where we want to get you. So how do you do that? Sometimes you just have to get mad and stay mad. Okay, so at the end of this training, you'll understand the key to getting closure, how we hold ourselves hostage when we don't get it, and I'm going to give you 4 simple strategies that will get you unstuck. So the key to getting closure. All right, here we go. Let's see. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's what? Indifference. Have you ever heard that before? I hadn't heard that till I was in my 20s, my mid-20s, and it kind of struck me. And it made a lot of sense. When I first heard the statement, I was going through my first major heartbreak, and the young man involved, we'll just call him Brett, was full of anger because of the way I ended the relationship. And I couldn't say really that I blamed him, because prior to our relationship, I was involved with a guy named, we'll just call him Mitch. I hadn't fully achieved closure with Mitch before Brett and I started to date. So in my 20s, I don't know if this was you or not, but being without a boyfriend was something I wasn't used to. So it's like I always had, somebody in the lineup in the queue or whatever. So needless to say, I jumped into the relationship, can't speak today, with Brett way too soon. So after about a 15-month relationship with Brett, I received a letter from who else but mystery man Mitch, telling me how much he missed me and how sorry he was for hurting me. OMG! That was like this, the young girl's vindication or something. Not to mention, he was a little bit older than me, quite a bit older than me, and had it going on. And to be able to attract a guy's interest like that, it was kind of cool. So anyway, I'm not going to lie. When I got that letter, I nearly went into a coma. I think I was dumbstruck, really. Dumbstruck is a good word. I sat on the top of my stairs of my parents' house, and between tears and the pages of his letter, I stared into space. It's kind of like I was notebooked, It's like I got that letter from Noah. Everything I had been denying hit me like a brick. So I decided before I could ever commit to Brett, I needed to explore my feelings for Mitch again. Well, that went over like a lead balloon. I'll get to that in a minute with Brett. So I responded to Mitch's letter, and before I knew it, he was at my doorstep. And I was 20. At that age, I wasn't mature enough to handle my own feelings, let alone the feelings of someone else. So is it any wonder that Brett and I broke up after I confessed my state of confusion? Probably not, right? He was terribly hurt, and I was left kind of really regretting what I had done to him. Later, I regretted what I had done to myself. So here's how the rest of that story went. Shortly after I had let Mitch back into my life and cleared my plate for him, I learned that he wasn't serious about me, and I was foolhardy. I think you could have stamped the word sucker on my forehead. The amazing thing is, I wouldn't have changed anything about that experience, right? Is that crazy or what? But it taught me, here's the thing, it taught me how important it is to get closure. And thankfully, it was a lesson I learned at a very young age. Some people don't learn this lesson until later in life, when there's more at stake, like a spouse, a few kids, and a mortgage. Brett wouldn't speak to me for a couple years, and I thought his anger meant that he had no more feelings for me, but I later changed that opinion when I finally understood that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. If he hadn't loved me so much, he wouldn't have been so angry. If he was indifferent, he wouldn't have cared. In a twisted way, this new insight gave me hope. I guess I figured as long as he still felt something, there was a chance of reuniting. Man, was I a hopeless romantic. Oh my God, it was a sorry state of affairs for me. I was just kind of a goofy kid. Anyway, closure in a relationship comes in many forms, usually unexpectedly. You don't even realize when it's happening. You just know it when you have it. It is like healing from any wound. It's this pestering soreness until one day you realize you have healed. It's like, you got that Band-Aid and that scab that really hurts, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. Closure is like that, except it is a mental wound, not a physical one. So sometime after my divorce, I met up with Brett. And I still kind of had a spark for him after 12 years. Isn't that crazy? It was just a flicker. Through the years, though, Brett and we had talked on occasion, and it wasn't like anything romantic. It was just, hey, how are you? How's life? What's going on? Do you have kids? All that kind of stuff. So every 2 years or so, we might have had a conversation, a short one. And then slowly through these conversations, I got small doses of closure, but still it wasn't quite enough. So 7 years, let's see, after I had seen him last, so it was sometime after my divorce, we spoke and we decided, well, let's hook up and let's have a meeting and see each other face to face after all these years. So when I saw him, we had a good time talking and catching up, but to my surprise, the spark was gone. I mean, after 12 years of holding on to this kind of image and ideal of him, right? Just like that, overnight, the spark was gone. So a few weeks later, it was kind of like I realized there was no longer a compelling urge to call him anymore. When you have this mental image of your ideal and you finally come face to face with that ideal, you will realize that your image lacks what the rest of your senses are able to discern. Okay, so let me explain that. It's kind of a loaded concept. By coming face to face with Brett, all my senses came together and formulated the conclusion that I had finally received closure. So I have a berry pie right here. This is cherry pie because I picked cherry because that's probably my favorite pie. It was like one of those things where if you can imagine a cherry pie and the first time you ever had it, maybe it was at your grandma's house or something, and the crust was really flaky and the berries were really juicy and tender, and it was just mouth-watering. And so you go to replicate that pie, and maybe you're not the best baker in the world and you're just trying it for the first time, and you bake this pie and you bite into it, and it's just not what grandma's pie tasted like. Okay, the crust is a little dry. The berries are overdone, and it's just not what you remembered. That's kind of what I'm trying to say, is forever you've had this mental image of what this berry pie was supposed to taste like. And when you tasted it, you've added too much salt and it's just not grandma's pie. So that's where I'm going with this little expression here, this concept. So in my divorce, closure came much faster than it did with Brett, because I had to come face to face with my ex all the time. We were dealing with kids, and so we'd see each other, every other week. So, but with Brett, it was like once every 2 years. So I saw Brett only a few times after our relationship ended, but because my ex and I had children together, I was forced to see him more often. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. If I had not been forced to see my ex, I might not have gotten the closure I needed. And with him, I healed in about 1.5 years. And again, with this past relationship, took maybe 12 years to get that closure. So my point is that get closure sooner than later. And my takeaway from that experience was this: the closer the intervals of time between doses of closure, the faster you will heal. So that's just a little Tommy wisdom, but I hope that works for you. It certainly did for me, and I think that kind of holds true with a lot of things. So not getting closure is like finishing only half a prescription. Like that your doctor says, oh, here's some antibiotics, finish the whole thing, or else you have to start over because you'll develop an immunity. So, like, not getting closure is like finishing only half a prescription because your symptoms will come back and it will take you several doses of antibiotics before you get well if you don't do it right the first time. So how long should it take to achieve closure? Well, closure is very subjective and there is no timeline. It took me, like I said, almost 12 years with Brett, even though our relationship only lasted 15 months. But I was over my 9-year marriage to Jim in a year and a half. Why was that? Because I only spoke to Brett a handful of times, as I mentioned, and to Jim, I spoke with him more often. So, what does it feel like to have closure? Obtaining closure is a freeing experience. It's wonderful. When you know what it feels like, or you will know what it feels like when you are no longer consumed with getting it. You will feel free, even liberated, because it no longer holds you hostage. And it will come, trust me. Just give it some time. Okay, DABDA is a acronym for the stages of grief and getting over something. So DABDA stands for denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it just sounds so much like Yabba Dabba Doo that I had to throw in Fred Flintstone. It kind of might help you remember DABDA. So divorce can be either of two extremes, quick and simple or long and complicated. Whichever kind and whatever the reason, we all share the same set of emotions in getting through divorce and moving on with our lives. Even if a third party isn't involved, the sense of loss and betrayal is the same because it's a loss of a life promised to us, and a betrayal because that promise was broken. The healing process is what you make of it, right? And the acronym I went through was DABDA. And you can bounce around through these back and forth between denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. You might be in denial one day, then you might be accepting it, then you might be angry, then you might be back in denial again, and then depressed, and then pretty soon you're reasoning, trying to bargain to get things to work it out again, and then you're back in denial, and you just go through these. It's a cycle. But eventually you go through them all. And it doesn't really matter who left who. We all go through these stages at different speeds, and if you are like me, you will bounce back and forth through them several times until you're done. If you stuff them and don't deal with your emotions, they will eventually hit you one day and you will crash. Your health will suffer, and until you fully grieve, you will get stuck. You just can't get to indifference without going through the grieving process. I think that's a scientific fact, but I don't have anything to support that and back it up at the moment. Here we go. Here's another strategy. Here's the second strategy to getting to indifference. Get mad and stay mad. Allow yourself to grieve. And remember, there isn't a time limit on grieving. And at the end of this module here, I do have a checklist on healthy ways of staying mad. So I remember feeling like my ex was happy when I was nothing but sad and depressed. And I couldn't imagine him ever feeling what I was feeling. Maybe that sounds familiar to you. He was out having a grand old time, no responsibilities, just living life large. And I was home, raising the kids, going to work, being responsible, and holding it together. And my girlfriend, though, she said it to me best. She came over one day when I was having a bad day, and she said, Tommy, you'll heal 50% faster than he will because you are having these feelings now. His feelings will come. And she was right. They eventually did. But at some point, you have to get mad. I mean, like wicked mad, and stay mad. And that anger, you have to keep your focus on the bad stuff and dredge it up often, because that anger is what will, if you channel that in a positive direction, it will really heal you. So I have more to say on that. So it has to be front and center whenever you think of this person, your anger. Okay, just I'm not talking like all the time. I'm just saying until you get past this stuff. You don't want to play the victim, and you don't want to get stuck in that depressed state. So the anger stage will really help. So you need to convince yourself to stay mad. That's why that checklist I've provided you is a good tool for you. So the moment you falter, you're doomed. That's when you get weak and soft and start thinking about all the mushy good times. And, well, knock it off. Your job right now is to be pissed. I mean, really pissed. Okay? So get there, stay that way, and get past that whole little depression. And that's how you kind of have to do it. And I know it's hard, and I'm not a good, I can't even practice what I preach, but I'm just telling you, this is what you have to do. So now, I don't know, I don't want you to do anything that will get you into trouble either. I'm just saying, mentally, you need to be angry and use that anger, channel it, work with it, use it to get rid of the stuff you shared, and start over. So, oops. Here we go. So, like I said below, there's the video. Under this video, there's, a checklist to help you stay mad and in a healthy way. So take a look at it, print it out, keep it by your journal. You are journaling, right? Because that'll really help. Not everybody's a writer or journaler, but it does help. And really try to put some of these suggestions into place. Believe me, it will make a difference. So scroll down under this section. It's there. Get it now, okay? Okay, so some people live in the past their whole lives, while others are able to step into the present and trudge on to their next relationship without ever looking back. Those living in the past truly envy those who can put things behind them. The past dwellers continually beat themselves up, asking, if I had only done this or that differently, would he or she still be in my life? They wonder where they went wrong. Meanwhile, the don't look backers freely release themselves and move forward. The difference is simply timing. So, when you're not ready to release yourself from feeling sad or guilty, you will punish yourself by living in the past. I love this cartoon. This guy's, oops, he's got his head on backwards. So yeah, he's going into the doctor to get his head examined and straightened out. So that was me. Is that you? I don't know. I hope not. So where are we? So it's our consciences. It's our conscious. I can't even say the word. It's our conscience's way of punishing ourselves. Those that are able to move on, free themselves from guilt, and accept that it wasn't meant to be. I was always in denial. I could never accept that. So it took a while. Eventually, I got there. You have to develop a strong personal constitution and adopt a belief, what I call SW. And that stands for some will, some won't, so what? So this basically means that you will, some will love you, some won't. So what, right? So what? There are plenty of other fish in the deep blue sea. So this is my SW slide. Believing that there will eventually be someone else is a means of letting go of the past. So I have to tell you, my dad, God bless him, he is great with his expressions. And he says, so what? The best way I've ever heard anybody. It's just this, it's like a action. In fact, you know what? I think I'm going to call my dad and have him give you his so what, so that you can get an idea of what I heard growing up. And it's a real kick in the pants, because when you hear it, it's something like it's ingrained in your conscience forever. And I'm just going to call my dad right now so you can hear him. And hold on. I'm gonna pause here for just a minute until I get my dad on the phone. Okay, I'm calling Mom and Dad. My mom and dad are so cute. They've been married since they were 17. And they're in their 70. Hi, Daddy. It's me.
Hi, it's me.
I have you. I'm recording one of my my webinar thingies, and I have you on speaker because I want you to say something for me, for my audience.
I don't understand what you want me to do.
Hey, Mom.
Right place, you're speaking to my baby girl today. Today, the third day of April.
Second day. See, she's already correcting him. I haven't been on the phone for a minute yet, and my mom's already correcting my dad. Hey, so, Dad, I have you on the phone. Can you just say, so what? Like you always say?
So what?
You gotta, okay, one more time, Dad. Give it to me real loud and clear.
So what?
Am I telling you, is that just perfect or what? Okay, all right, Daddy, I'm going to call you back in a little bit. That was perfect. I'll call you later. Thanks, Pop.
Love you, baby.
Love you too. Bye. Are they just not the best or what? So that so what is what you need, okay? And I'm just telling you, you gotta kick yourself once in a while. All right, so here we go. Many people get stuck in the mental trap of self-pity and don't believe there will ever be another person for them. So anger, fear, stubbornness, and mistrust hold them back, as well as a lack of self-love. Am I speaking to the choir here? I hope not. But if I am, you're no different than me. I was the same way. Truth is, we have all been there. Everyone feels devastated at the end of a significant relationship. There is no denying the loss felt. It's a matter of putting things into perspective. So I remember driving back from my hometown with my mom shortly after ending this relationship and feeling the despair of being alone. And my mom poignantly pointed out to me that there are 6.5 billion people on this planet, and there is more than just one right person for each of us. So she said, that if people can live in the same community all their lives and find their soulmate within a 50-mile radius. You see, my mom and dad, they met in high school, and they've been married, like I said, 50 some odd years. The odds of finding everlasting love anywhere on our planet is highly probable. This was the first time statistics really made sense to me, so I got the message loud and clear. Women tend to think that men move out of the past faster than they do, but it really has more to do with practice than gender. The more you are willing to put yourself out there and experience new beginnings, the more endings you might endure. But with anything, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So it can be a learned behavior to move from the past to the present. You like my Pavlov dog? This may seem obvious to so many people, but yet so many of us don't know how to do it. Most likely, many people understand this concept but refuse to try. American Idol or icon Ray Charles, classic. He says, "I can't stop loving you." You know that song? Says it all. The next verse is, "I've made up my mind to live in memory of the lonesome kind." So we are all capable of moving out of the past, but some of us stay longer because it's our way of remaining connected to our former partner. You like my little ball and chain guy right there? They disguise their longing for the past by telling themselves they can't ever trust anyone again. It sounds better than admitting that they're scared to let go of the past or have issues with fear of abandonment. Sound familiar? Hope not, again. But some of the most successful business people I know recoil in fear when it comes to their personal lives. They're afraid that ending a relationship will be devastating and they can't fathom ever starting another one. So they settle. Yet in business, fear is their motivator. They can make financial decisions with lightning speed, but they won't budge an inch to improve their love lives. They put their personal problems on the back burner and never confront them. They stay busy at work in order to ignore the problem. Hello, McFly. Anybody out there? Am I speaking to you? It is pretty easy to figure out why. They only do what they are good at and can control. Control freak. They can't accept failure, but they fail to realize that they are only failing themselves. Am I talking to anybody out there you might know? Just asking. So how do we make this transition from past to present? How do we free ourselves from loving someone from the past? You must seek closure until you have it. It's like the buried treasure. Don't seek the treasure. What was that from? Oh, brother, where art thou? Do not seek the treasure. But here, we want you to seek the treasure. You have to seek closure until you have it. Sounds good, Tommy, but how? How do we do this? For years, I have had the same discussion with a friend of mine about men in her life. She explained that money was her security blanket. She thought money was the answer, not love. But I think her priorities were a little screwed up. I had met her husband, and they didn't seem at all a likely pair. She admitted to me that she married someone she could never hurt, who could never hurt her because she didn't marry for love. She hadn't allowed her marriage to give her security. She has let fear rob her of a better love, in my opinion. I was perplexed why she could not overcome her fears. I have had the good fortune to meet Dr. Stephen Covey, an international authority on leadership and values. You've probably heard of his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was when he had released his 8th habit that I had the pleasure of meeting him. And he explained it to me like this. He said, people consumed by fear need to have a person with whom they can safely confide. They just need to be heard. If someone they trust listens, they will eventually get tired of their own issues. But they have to come to this conclusion themselves. So in doing so, they will find their own closure. So my answer to that, I have another strategy, is get a good friend who you can confide in. Someone with a sense of humor that'll make you laugh. I'm telling you, laughter is key. Misery loves company, and you need to get with friends going through divorce themselves. I'm telling you, my divorced friends were my saviors. We made each other laugh by finding the humor in our situations. We picked each other up, we carried each other, we supported each other. Get divorced friends. It will save your life. Not having closure only gets in the way of a new relationship when it distracts us mentally and draws us to act upon old feelings. So I'm changing the subject here a little bit. So it's not good not getting closure. Take the case of my friend Jay and the hookup call. So everyone has experienced the call, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the booty call, which usually comes late at night with only one purpose, which is to get some booty. The hookup call comes unexpectedly during the waking hours from an ex looking for a status check. Now, it could be an ex-boyfriend, could be your ex-husband or ex-wife, whatever, but just looking for a status check on your love life. The sole motive is to find out if you are seeing anybody, and if not, if you can hook up again. This might be more appropriate for after you've started dating again, but this can come, it can come from the ex as well. So like anything, the more you understand about human nature, the better. My experience has been that if the relationship ended because your partner was not ready for a commitment and you treated him or her with respect, chances are you will be the receiver of a hookup call. So the hookup call usually comes within 6 months to, I'd say, 2 years after the end of a relationship. The closer the call comes to the 6-month mark, know this: the more sincere the caller is about rekindling the relationship. The closer to the 2-year mark, the less sincere. And after 2 years, it's probably just a booty call. That's another Tommyism and wisdom from according to Tommy. In most cases, the caller's intentions to get back together are sincere. You must step back, though, and evaluate what's happening. But that is not so easy right then and there, right? Because you're kind of overwhelmed with excitement, anger, confusion, and curiosity all at the same time. It's hard to imagine that the ringing of the telephone can awaken so many feelings. So here's a little story that I'm going to give you about my friend Jay. When he decided to get over Terry, he took up internet dating with a vengeance. After several tries, he met Nan, and the whole online dating thing didn't work out well. And then he met this gal Nan, and the relationship pretty much took off. After several months of moving on from Terry and moving forward with Nan, Jay got the call. The call came from Terry. Jay had been seeing Nan for several months, and she was just really thoughtful, and he was kind of convinced now that the breakup with Terry was for the best. But instead of moving on by himself until he got closure from Terry, Jay chose to latch on to Nan. So he attached himself to Nan to try to get over Terry. Not a good idea, but a lot of people do this. So in doing so, he wasn't completely ready for what was about to happen, and here's what happened. The call came during the holidays. Aren't holidays great for stuff like that? You hear from everybody, even the exes. It was Terry. So Jay waited a few days to return the call. That was like the only thing smart that he did. So he waited for a few days to return the call. And during this period, though, he was tormented with what to do. I think I probably got 30 phone calls from, I don't know, should I call her? I don't know. Should you? Should I? Could you? So by the time Jay returned the call, he had enough time to reflect. He was careful not to reveal too much about his present relationship. He did this to kind of protect Terry and also to keep the door open with her. So he still wasn't completely sure that Terry wasn't for him at this point. So by allowing himself the time to reflect on the bad experiences he had with Terry, he was able to snap out of the spell her call had put him under immediately, that first confusion state. So he remembered how she had hurt him, how she had lied to him, how she was impatient with his pain and feelings after she had cheated on him, and all the little things she never did for him. But Jay was a guy, sorry, I'm stereotyping here, and kept getting tripped up on the fact that how good the sex had been, okay? I'm not going to lie. That was my friend Jay. Do you know anyone like Jay? Just asking. Without complete closure, our hearts remain prey to the ex and can be vulnerable to their little whims. It's like, stay away from the light. Don't look at the light, little fishy. It's like setting yourself up to be the butt of a bad joke. Falling prey to the ex can leave us feeling like we want to shout a big Homer Simpson, "Doh!" Jay began to feel himself having doubts about his current relationship with Nan. Now that Terry was an option again, he was finding himself exploring his feelings for her. This was a surprise to Jay. Oh, really? Big surprise, Jay. I wanted to slap him. But anyway, he thought all his feelings for her were gone. After the call, he found himself more perplexed than ever about his relationship with Nan. Would he tell her about the call? Would he hook up with Terry over the holidays? Would he secretly seek the closure he needed? Or would he tell Nan this was something he needed to do so he could freely move forward in their relationship? Would she even understand? Oh, the pickle Jay got himself into is all too common. He was falling prey to the ex. What is crucial at this point is honesty. Jay and Terry had only broken up a few short months before Jay met Nan. Then, after the first 5 months, Jay was already in a semi-serious relationship with Nan. Should Nan have seen this coming? Was she naive to assume Jay was over this other woman? Nan should have kept Jay at a distance, and Jay should have kept Nan at a distance too until both partners had the talk together. So the talk is usually started by a very poignant question that is a potential deal breaker at the beginning of any relationship. Now hear me on this. Incidentally, it happens to be the one question you should always ask to avoid being the rebounder. I've written, and I'll get to the question in just a minute, I've written an article about this, and I get a lot of interest in this because everybody wants to know, well, what's the one question I should always ask, to avoid being the rebounder? And then they try to play that game and try to figure out, I wonder if I already asked it, if I know it or not. So here's the one question you should always ask to avoid being the rebounder. What would you do if your ex came back tomorrow? And here's the one right answer to that question. I'm going to give you a second to see if you can think of what that answer is. What would you do if your ex came back tomorrow if somebody asked you that question? What's the right answer to that? Because there's only one right answer. Okay, the answer is your potential partner wants to hear you say, you have experienced this scenario already. They want to hear that the meeting took place, it didn't work out, and consequently, you both moved on. Oh. Well, Jay did what he thought was best. He met Terry for coffee. Oh, the stupid little fool. I love that expression, stupid little fool. Okay, so he decided to keep this from Nan until he knew how he felt. All right, so he's trying to play it safe, cover all bases. He didn't want to worry or hurt her. During coffee, Terry told Jay how she had been wrong to hurt him. So he got his vindication, the validation. And finally, Jay was able to hear from Terry what he wanted to hear so many months before. After their meeting, he was more confused than ever. So should he stop seeing Nan and go back to Terry? This would break Nan's heart. Jay knew that. He decided he would stop seeing Nan and give himself a break from anything serious until he could figure things out. So that was the decent thing to do. But Jay fell prey to his ex in the process. He was vulnerable to Terry and slept with her, only to realize it wasn't what it used to be. Although he never mentioned this to Nan, the relationship suffered from it and gradually came to an end. It led Jay to question his true intentions with Nan, until finally he came to the conclusion that he rushed into their relationship. So he got to that full circle, but, at the expense of, sort of backing into it and having confusion and all that stuff that goes with that when you don't get closure. So my point here is this. You don't want to end up like Jay. When you rush into your relationships, you will end up like him. This is why it's so important to take your time to heal and spend the time alone until you absolutely are sure you're ready for the question, what would you do if your ex came back tomorrow? So you want to be sure to use the 4 strategies we talked about. Get closure sooner than later. Get mad, stay mad. SW, SW, SW. And get a friend you can confide in that will make you laugh. Did I show that slide? So here's that slide all over again. Get the closure, get mad, SW, SW, and get with a friend to make you laugh. So if you're ever to achieve indifference towards your ex, you have to face your fears, which means you're going to have to deal with your ex. Closure will come in doses, and it will be uncomfortable at first. If you have children together, closure may come faster because you will be forced to deal with one another. Just remember the importance of getting closure before establishing your next serious relationship. All right, that's it for Getting to Indifference. We'll see you in my next video.